Well, we are finally here. My dream car. A vehicle which a couple of people called ahead of time, a few episodes ahead or quite a few episodes ahead. To be fair, it has been featured in my countdowns before. I talk about it a lot on the channel. There are these handful of vehicles, cars and bikes that I bring up a lot because they are kind of benchmarks for me in terms of the vehicles that I truly love. And this one is one which kind of sprung onto the map for me. I can't remember exactly when, but I believe it was somewhere around the time of maybe Forza 4, perhaps a little bit later, where I knew about the car, and initially I did not like the car, the Ferrari FF of course. I didn't like the look of it. I thought it looked like it had a dumb grin on its face, and it wasn't so much that I thought it was a bad car, I just couldn't care less about it, almost just because it was a Ferrari. Because, of course, I'm not a Ferrari fan. You can see that from this list. There's only one Lamborghini on the entire list, no Ferraris up to this point, because I'm just not a fan of those manufacturers, generally speaking. However, this car, the FF, single-handedly made me respect Ferrari. And I know that that's a very strange pick of model to make you respect a brand that has had so many brilliant cars. I mean, many people's favourite cars include at least one or two Ferraris. The F40 is many people's, or at least among many people's favourite car, if not their favourite car. The Enzo is many people's favourite supercar. Even the F50 is a fan favourite. Something like the 599 has millions of petrolhead fans. Understandably so, they have tons of incredible cars. Even recently, with stuff like the FXX, or the 599XX, or the LaFerrari, they really do build incredible cars. But it was just a case for me that that wasn't enough. And that's kind of the same issue that I have with Porsche. I have a ton of respect for them, but I just don't love them. There's just something there that doesn't quite do it for me. Now, this car, in particular, the FF, the reason why it changed my opinion about Ferrari is because it's so much more than any other Ferrari has ever achieved. Because, of course, Ferrari, in the strict classic sense, is a racing team, in effect. They're a manufacturer that developed out of an initial love for and pursuit of victory. And then over the years, they've produced more and more road models, moved away from the racing world, while still having a very strong racing presence. They just use completely different models between road and racing. Whereas back in the day, their cars did both. They were basically just road-going race cars. That's how they got started. Whereas with the FF, this is something completely new, and the only real connection to any other previous Ferrari is a couple of the one-off wagons, or shooting brakes, if you will, that they made out of cars like the 456 GT for people like the Sultan of Brunei, who I believe has a couple of them, and they look fantastic. A Ferrari 456 looks incredible as a wagon. It really suits the shape of the car, but even that isn't enough for me. Certainly no way near enough to make me actually want one. It's just a cool abstract concept. With the FF though, I really admire that Ferrari took the chance of making a car like it, because to be fair, they didn't need to make the FF. Nobody was asking for a Ferrari like this. It's such a radical departure from literally everything they've done. It's a two-door, four-seater, all-wheel drive wagon. That doesn't sound like a typical Ferrari, because it's not a typical Ferrari. And that's why I love it. It's, I would say, possibly the most oddball car they've ever built, definitely the most oddball production car they've ever built, and it's finally a Ferrari that can, I think, genuinely take on stuff like the Aston Martin Rapide, the Nissan R35, you could say the Bentley Continental GT, a couple of others, even stuff like the Sauvage Rival and the Lister Storm, because it has 4 seats. In these ultimate top-tier supercars that you can genuinely use every day, because there are plenty of supercars that you could use every day for the sake of it almost, but they're not really practical. You're just overcoming that for the sake of enjoying using the car. They've got next to no trunk space, next to no practicality, barely 2 seats, and usually even those are cramped. You know what I mean. But then you get cars like this, the GTR being a perfect example as well. I get why people love the GTR so much. It has a nearly perfect package, and in its own way, I would say that the R35 is a perfect car. I don't love it, far from it, but I can see why people would think that it's, for instance, their dream car, or their favourite car, or their dream daily driver, as this one is for me. Because it is just one of those cars which pretty much ticks all of the boxes. However, there are a few things for me which hold me back from having that kind of love for an R35. For instance, the appearance. The R35 isn't a bad-looking car, but it's far from being one of my favourite designs. It's a little bit dull as far as the sound goes, the interior doesn't wow me, and in pretty much all of those ways, the FF ticks those boxes. It looks incredible, especially from the back. It sounds immense, as you heard at the start of this video, and that exact sound recording is from one of my favourite videos on YouTube, the Novatec Rosso exhaust upgrade, which you can get for the FF, which I would most definitely fit if I actually owned one. And of course, as I've mentioned before, this is my dream daily driver. It's a car which has been on my radar of favourites for quite some time now. I never quite put it into first place because I just thought that there were others like the Zonda F or the Chazetta, which I loved even more. But upon rethinking it, and actually it was one of the catalysts for doing this entire series, I thought, well, not really. The FF is indeed already my dream car. I already knew that. But I do genuinely believe that I like it enough to make it my favourite car as well. Because when I think of owning any one car, it would be the FF. And I know that that's a very strange concept to many people because there are so many cars which could seem to be better. Cars which do have more power or that are faster. But to me, this is a car which, in a strange way, I would put in the exact same camp as cars like the Zonda F, the MC12, and funnily enough, and this is the one that people might not agree with, a Tesla Model S, the P90D in particular, where I would say it's a genuinely perfect car. Yes, you can nitpick this and nitpick that, maybe you personally don't like the design quite as much, but objectively speaking, if you put fandom to one side, even something like an R35, which I am able to look at objectively, put the fact that I don't love it to one side, and still say, yes, I agree, it's pretty much a perfect car. It does everything you could possibly want a daily driver to do. I still don't love it, but I can appreciate it for that. Likewise, the FF ticks every box. It's got 4 seats, far better trunk space than almost all of its rivals, if not all of them. The Lister Storm, the R35, the Rapide comes close actually, because it's a hatchback, but most of those others don't have anywhere near the trunk space. A Sauvage Rival certainly doesn't, especially with the roof down. Then you've got the fact that it's a proper 4-seater, and that is something which a lot of its rivals don't genuinely have. Yes, they are 4-seaters, but they're 2+2s, in a very strict sense, so the legroom is almost non-existent. They're a 4-seater almost as a formality, whereas with something like the Tesla, or the Sauvage, or a Rapide, because of the fact that they are 4 doors, they are genuine 4-seaters, whereas the disadvantage of that is that the car is very long, and almost sometimes disproportionately long, such as the Aston Martin Rapide, which looks elegant, but not necessarily fast around a track. The FF bridges that gap, because it's a genuine 4-seater, because it's such a huge car, but at the same time it's a 2-door, so the shape of the car can be tailor-made to the fact that it is still a true 2-door supercar. It's essentially, you could say, an F12 with a wagon on the back, which is ironic given that I don't like the F12 at all, but I love the FF. And then you've got the engine, that 6.3 litre V12, going to all-wheel drive, of course, which again is something so radically different for Ferrari, 7-speed gearbox, almost as much power as an Enzo, 653 horsepower, top speed of like 208 miles per hour, I believe it is, 0 to 60, about, 3.4 seconds, partially thanks to the all-wheel drive, of course, and even though it is heavy, at close to 1.9 tons, in other words, about the same as a Veyron, well, yeah, think about that. It's about the same as a Veyron. A Veyron is one of the most impractical supercars you can get in terms of how much it costs to run one. It's still only got 2 seats, the trunk space is not great, and, to cap it all off, you're paying pretty much 10 times the price. This, you can pick up an FF used in fantastic condition in pretty much whatever colour you're looking for anywhere between 120 and 180,000 pounds. That's a whole lot of cash, of course, but for a car like this, that's actually pretty good. Now, I love the FF, of course, I talk about it a lot, and for me this was just one of those vehicles on the list where there wasn't really a question. And of course you'd expect that to happen more in the top 10 than anywhere else, but it really was for me just a fact. I knew it was going to be in this position, and spoiler alert, but not really, because you already know what's coming in first place if you know me at all, if you've been around on the channel. This is the highest car on the list, so it's definitely my favourite car in the world. It's already been my dream car for some time, and the FF is a true supercar that you can use every day. The sound is incredible, the engine is a piece of art, the performance is definitely more than capable enough to rival a Carrera GT or an SLR or an MC12, at least in a straight line, but then you remind yourself that it's got all-wheel drive and can go off-road, as very few supercars can, and you pretty much immediately leave any other supercar behind once bad weather comes in. And weather ain't good all the time, so having a car like this in the snow or in the rain or even on a muddy road, I think that's an awesome concept. It's almost like a Ferrari rally car. It's a combination of all of these vehicles almost put together. A true multi-purpose car. In a similar way as well to something like an Axum Megatrack, which I have a whole lot of love for. Didn't quite make it into the top 50, but again, a truly usable multi-purpose supercar. I love the FF. I could go on about it for ages, as I'm sure you could tell, but yeah, that's it for this pick. Incredible car. And I think it's one which is probably going to hold this position for some time, to say the least. But that's it for this pick. Of course, you can check out all of the other episodes, and stick around tomorrow for the final episode of the entire series. Some of you have already guessed it. It's a pretty obvious one. And it's a vehicle which is technically only one number higher than this, but it's a whole lot higher. I love the FF, but I'd give a kidney for the vehicle that's in number 1. So stick around for that tomorrow, of course, and for now, as always, thanks for watching.